Hello, and while I can't tell you my name, I would like to tell you a bit about my family's story. My goal is to tell of the efforts and hardships of Latinos and how they shaped the U.S. and the world. Because the railroad plays a big part in my life and the lives of my loved ones before me, I decided to style my presentation as if it were a train, traveling along the path laid out by the years of Latino history. I'll be making multiple stops along the way to tell you about important points within my story. But let's not waste any more time. All aboard, our journey awaits. Our first stop is at Cotton Connection. Cotton is one of the most widely used fibers in the world. In the U.S., about 10% of Americans made a living off of growing, producing, and handling cotton in the 1950s and 40s. Both my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandfather worked as migrant workers in the fields of Texas and New Mexico. During the 1940s, they picked cotton by hand from sun up to sundown during the harvesting months of August through December. They endured long, demanding workdays in the fields during some of the hottest and coldest months in the South. They would move through rows carrying large sacks that, when full, weighed up to 70 pounds each. It took one man 30 hours to pick 1 acre of cotton by hand. They, alongside many others, labored to clothe, feed, and provide for their families, as well as America. The cotton they picked would be distributed to create fabrics, furnishings, oils, house decor, paper money, and even explosives for the U.S. military. Not to mention, many of the goods could be used to trade with foreign countries and help to boost the American economy. By contrast, if we look at agriculture today, the number of farms with Hispanic principal operators grew 51.2% between the years of 1997 and 2002, and furthermore grew 21% from the years of 2007 to 2012, and showed that 166,734 farms in the United States had Hispanic operators and principal operators. These farms sold $17.2 billion worth of agricultural products, livestock sales, and crop sales. Though it has been nearly 80 years since my grandparents worked in the fields, Latinos are still the main labor source within farm work in America. About 1 in 3 farm workers are Latinos. According to the National Center for Farm Worker Health, the majority, about 72%, of workers are foreign-born immigrants to the U.S. Latinos are quite literally feeding America, alongside the other territories and countries the U.S. does trade with. Even so, they receive minimal health benefits, like benefits such as insurance and health care. But during the current pandemic, farm workers and harvesters were deemed essential in ensuring food security for Americans. And while this is good for the recognition of workers, it still leaves them susceptible and vulnerable to the coronavirus. My next stop is at Military Crossing. After working in the fields, my grandfather served in the United States Army during the Korean War. He was one of the 148,000 Hispanics who served in what is commonly referred to as the Forgotten War. There are many other specific examples of Latino contributions in America's time of need, one being an all-volunteer Puerto Rican unit nicknamed the Fire Brigade because of their superior skill in battling even the worst blazes during war. Another one being Company E from El Paso, Texas. They helped to liberate Rome from Nazi control in 1944. Company E was the only U.S. Army company composed solely of Chicanos during the war. This was all during a time when the armed forces were still segregated. Latino soldiers were sorted into regiments so that they would not intermingle with their white counterparts, and were sometimes punished and looked down upon if they spoke their native language of Spanish. Even so, they fought bravely and stood for the betterment of how Latinos were treated in society. Today, Latinos are the fastest growing group within the U.S. military and make up about 16% of active duty servicemen. Our third stop is at Healthcare Junction. My aunt, on my mother's side, began working as a candy striper in her local hospital at the age of 14, and she has spent over 50 years in the healthcare field. Her daughter, my cousin, is a licensed master social worker and works in psychological rehabilitation in the Austin area. These were excellent people to look up to when I was growing up, and really good role models because I plan to pursue a career in the medical field as well. I hope to help others as they have helped others in their communities. Today, there are more than 2.2 million Hispanic healthcare workers, a third of which are immigrants to the U.S. They represent 13% of healthcare providers in America and 12% in biomedical and pharmaceutical industries. Our final stop today is at Industrial Boulevard. My grandfather worked multiple jobs within the railroad, and my father went on to become a locomotive engineer. My mother worked in factories as part of manufacturing teams, and most recently worked in the IT field for over 16 years. When our house was being built years ago, the construction crews were all Hispanic. A good friend of mine, who is Latino, recently became a licensed electrician and is employed by Encore Energy. And of course, here in our community of Temple, Texas, we drive by road construction daily, most of which are composed of Hispanic construction workers. Latinos make up 27.3% of construction workers, 17% of natural gas workers, which include mining and quarrying, 16% of transportation and utilities, and 16% of manufacturing workers. In my household, hard work is valued above all. So it only made sense that I would reflect on the hard work of my family and the Latino community as a whole. I wanted to show that the active contributions that we make on the daily. I intended for this presentation to be broad, rather than to focus on some of the lessons I have learned from my family. Singularly, I wanted to dive into the many ways Latinos, citizens, and immigrants shaped the life we live today. A lot of my statistics and numbers are from U.S. data. I intentionally focused on the role we play in America because the Latino population is often the target of scrutiny and slander within the media. In everyday life, Latinos, regardless of citizenship, face the demeaning assumptions of others that are simply not true and not at all fair to the 56.4 million Latinos living in the United States of America. I am the product of seeds planted long ago within the fields of Texas and New Mexico, watered by the sweat and tears of the hardships my families faced to make way for my parents to live and achieve. And it is because of these efforts I am able to reap knowledge and harvest the opportunities before me. I cannot stand in my success without the light of their sacrifices shining through me. I believe in the future of agriculture. I believe in the future of healthcare, and I believe in a future filled with innovations, progress, and acceptance. And I believe, in more than anything, in the part Latinos will play in bringing about what lies ahead. Thank you.